There is a machine running quietly in the background of every economy on Earth. You cannot see it. You cannot hear it. But it is working every single second on every dollar in existence. For some people, this machine is a printing press that never stops. For others, it is a slow and silent thief that empties their pockets while they sleep. It does not care about your morality. It does not care about how hard you work. It does not care about your dreams. It only obeys one law, a mathematical law so simple that a child can understand it, yet so brutal in its consequences that entire civilizations have risen and fallen because of it. Albert Einstein is often quoted as calling it the eighth wonder of the world. Whether he actually said those words is debated by historians, but the sentiment captures something true. This force is more powerful than the steam engine, more transformative than electricity, more persistent than any government or king. And yet, most people who are crushed by it have no idea it exists. They feel its weight, they sense that something is wrong, they work harder, longer, smarter, and somehow they still fall behind. Meanwhile, a small group of families, sitting in offices in Manhattan and Geneva and London, watch their fortunes double, triple, multiply across generations without lifting a finger. The machine is called compound interest, and in the next 25 minutes, we are going to dismantle it piece by piece. We will look inside its gears. We will see how it lifts the rich into the stratosphere. We will see how it grinds the poor into the dirt. And by the end, you will understand a truth that the financial industry would prefer you never grasp. The system is not broken. It is working exactly as designed. The only question that matters is which side of the equation you are standing on. Imagine you are standing in a long hallway. At the end of the hallway, there are two doors. Above the first door, there is a sign that reads, Lender. Above the second door, there is a sign that reads, Borrower. You do not get to choose which door you walk through. The choice was made for you, sometimes generations before you were born, by your parents, by your grandparents, by the country you were born in, by the language you speak, by the school you attended. But every single day of your adult life you walk through one of these two doors. And the door you walk through determines almost everything about your financial future. Behind the first door, the door of the lender, compound interest is your servant. Every dollar you place inside this room begins to multiply. It does not multiply on a straight line. It multiplies on a curve. Year 1, the curve is gentle. Year 5, you can see it bending upward. Year 20, it is rising sharply. Year 40, it is nearly vertical. The longer you stay in this room, the more violently your wealth accelerates. The math is so favorable that even a modest deposit, left alone for long enough, can grow into a fortune. You do not need to be brilliant. You do not need to be lucky. You only need time and the willingness to leave the money alone. Behind the second door, the door of the borrower, compound interest is your master. Every dollar you owe inside this room begins to multiply against you. The same curve that lifts the lender into the sky pushes the borrower into the ground. Year 1, the debt seems manageable. Year 5, you are running just to stay in place. Year 20, the original loan has been paid back many times over, and yet the balance is still there, still growing, still demanding more. The longer you stay in this room, the more violently you sink. You do not need to be foolish. You do not need to be unlucky. You only need time and the inability to escape. These two rooms are connected. The wealth that grows on one side comes from the labor and the payments and the interest of the people on the other side. There is no compound growth without compound debt. There is no fortune without a counterparty. The lender and the borrower are not separate worlds. They are the two halves of the same machine. To understand why compound interest is so devastating, you have to understand why it is different from simple interest. Simple interest grows on a straight line. If you lend $1,000 at 10% simple interest, you earn $100 every year, forever. After 10 years, you have made $1,000 in interest. After 20 years, $2,000. After 50 years, $5,000. The line is flat. The growth is predictable. There is nothing magical about it. Compound interest grows on a curve. The same $1,000 at 10% compound interest earns $100 in the first year. But in the second year, the interest is not calculated on the original 1,000. It is calculated on 1,100. So you earn 110. In the third year, 1,210. The interest itself begins to earn interest. The growth feeds on itself. After 10 years, your $1,000 has become roughly the 2,500. After 20 years, 6,700. After 50 years, over $117,000. The same starting amount, the same interest rate. A completely different destination. This is the curve that Einstein, or whoever it really was, called the eighth wonder of the world. It is also the curve that explains why the rich are not simply richer than the poor, but are pulling away from the poor at an accelerating rate. Wealth, when it is allowed to compound, does not grow. It explodes. And debt, when it is allowed to compound, does not accumulate. It detonates. The terrifying part of this mathematics is the role of time. In the first decade, the curve looks almost identical to a straight line. In the second decade, it begins to bend. In the third decade, the bend becomes a sweep. In the fourth decade, the sweep becomes a rocket. Most of the growth happens at the end. This is why someone who starts investing at 25 and someone who starts at 35 with identical contributions can end up with wildly different fortunes. The first investor does not have 10 more years. They have 10 more years at the end of the curve, where every year is worth more than all the previous years combined. Time is not just a factor in compound interest. Time is the factor. Every wealthy family knows a small piece of arithmetic that most ordinary people have never been taught. It is called the Rule of 72. It works like this. Take the number 72. Divide it by your annual rate of return. The result is the number of years it will take for your money to double. At a return of 7%, your money doubles every 10 years. At a return of 9%, every 8 years. At a return of 12%, every 6 years. This single line of mental math is one of the most important tools in the arsenal of generational wealth. Imagine a family that places $100,000 into a diversified portfolio, earning a long-term return of 9%. After 8 years, that $100,000 has become $200,000. After 16 years, $400,000. After 24 years, $800,000. After 32 years, $1.6 million. After 40 years, $3.2 million. After 48 years, $6.4 million. The original deposit has multiplied by 64. Not because anyone was clever, not because anyone took a risk, simply because the money was left alone and the doublings were allowed to occur. Now apply the same rule to debt. A credit card balance of $10,000 at an interest rate of 24% doubles every 3 years if it is left unpaid. After 3 years, 20,000. After 6 years, 40,000. After 9 years, 80,000. After 12 years, 160,000. The same arithmetic that builds a fortune on one side of the door builds a prison on the other. The rule of 72 does not discriminate. It works for whoever is sitting on the right side of the contract. What this rule reveals more than anything else is the importance of the rate. A 2 percentage point difference in returns does not produce a 2 percentage point difference in outcomes. Over 40 years, it can produce a difference of 2 or 3 times the final wealth. This is why the wealthy obsess over basis points. This is why hedge funds charge enormous fees and still attract billions of dollars. A small advantage in the rate, compounded over decades, becomes an unbridgeable chasm in the result. Before we go further, if any of this is starting to make you see the world a little differently, that is exactly what this channel exists for. Subscribe to Ledger Cipher and turn on the bell because we decode the hidden financial systems that quietly shape the lives of billions of people. The next video might be the one that changes how you think about money forever. Now, back to the machine. A wealthy family does not earn money the way an ordinary family earns money. An ordinary family trades hours for dollars. They wake up, they go to work, they perform a task, they receive a wage. When they stop working, the income stops. The relationship between effort and payment is direct, immediate, and finite. There is a ceiling on how many hours can be sold in a week, and there is a ceiling on the price of each hour. This is the labor economy, and almost everyone you know lives inside it. A wealthy family lives in a different economy. They do not primarily trade hours for dollars. They own assets that produce dollars whether they work or not. A share of a profitable company. A piece of real estate that collects rent. A bond that pays interest. A private business that throws off cash. These assets are like trees that bear fruit every season. The family does not have to climb the tree. The fruit falls into a basket at the bottom, and the basket is emptied into the next tree, which then grows larger and bears more fruit, which fills more baskets. This is the asset economy, and it operates on completely different rules. When a wealthy family receives the fruit, the dividends, the rents, the interest, the profits, they do not consume it. They reinvest it. The dividends from one stock are used to buy more stock. The rent from one building is used to acquire another building. The interest from one bond is used to purchase another bond. Every harvest plants a new orchard. The family is, in effect, hooked directly into the compound interest machine. They have plugged themselves into the curve. Every year that passes, the curve carries them higher, with no additional effort required from them. This is the secret that is hiding in plain sight. The rich are not richer because they work harder. Many of them do work hard, but that is not the source of the gap. The rich are richer because they own the kinds of things that get richer on their own. They own the engine. The poor own only their labor, and labor does not compound. Labor wears out, labor ages, labor gets sick and tired and eventually retires. But a share of a great company keeps producing forever, and the heirs inherit it, and the curve continues without interruption. If the rich are connected to the compound interest machine on the side that produces wealth, the poor are connected to the same machine on the side that consumes it. Every payday loan, every credit card balance, every overdraft fee, every car title loan, every rent-to-own contract, every subprime mortgage is a wire that runs from a household into the engine, and the engine pulls a small amount of value out of that household every single day and sends it upward into the accounts of the people who own the lenders. Consider the average household in a developed country. They carry credit card debt at an interest rate that often exceeds 20%. They finance a car at 6 or 8%. They carry a mortgage at 5 or 6%. They pay overdraft fees, late fees, account maintenance fees, currency conversion fees, ATM fees. Each of these charges is small in isolation. A few dollars here, a few dollars there. But every one of those charges is a payment into the compound interest machine on the wrong side of the door. And the machine accepts those payments and uses them to grow the wealth of the institutions that issued the loans. The cruelty of this arrangement is that the people who are paying the most into the machine are usually the people who can least afford it. A wealthy borrower can negotiate a mortgage at the lowest available rate. A poor borrower pays a higher rate because they are considered higher risk. A wealthy person never pays an overdraft fee because they have a buffer. A poor person pays overdraft fees regularly because they are always one bill away from the edge. The system charges the most to the people who have the least and rewards the most the people who already have the most. This is not a bug, it is the central operating principle. There is a phrase that captures this, attributed to many different writers over the years. It goes something like this. It is expensive to be poor. The reason it is expensive is compound interest, running in reverse. Every fee, every penalty, every high interest rate is a small force pushing the household further down the curve. And once the curve begins to bend downward, escape becomes nearly impossible. The household is no longer running its own economy. It is feeding someone else's. There is another layer to this machine that almost no one talks about, and it is the most subtle layer of all. It is called inflation, and it is the silent partner of compound interest. While compound interest grows the value of capital on one side of the ledger, inflation eats away at the value of cash on the other. And here is the trick. Most poor and middle-class households hold their savings in cash, while most wealthy households hold their savings in assets. Inflation is not a natural disaster. It is a policy choice. Central banks around the world target inflation rates of around 2% per year, and they often exceed those targets. At 2% inflation, the value of a dollar held in a bank account is cut in half every 36 years, at 4% inflation every 18 years. At 8% inflation every 9 years. The cash sitting in your savings account is melting. Slowly, quietly, but relentlessly. You can feel it when you go to the grocery store. You can feel it when you look at the price of a house compared to a decade ago. The dollar in your hand is shrinking, but the wealthy are not holding cash, they are holding shares in companies that raise their prices when inflation rises. They are holding real estate that appreciates when the currency loses value. They are holding commodities that price themselves against the falling dollar. For them, inflation is not a thief. It is sometimes a friend. because their debts, fixed in dollars, become easier to repay as the dollar shrinks. The poor lose ground to inflation. The rich often gain ground from it. The same monetary force, applied to two different balance sheets, produces opposite results. This is why financial education that begins and ends with the advice to save money is, in many cases, actively harmful. Saving in cash in an environment of persistent inflation is a slow guarantee of impoverishment. The system has been designed in a way that rewards ownership of productive assets and punishes the holding of currency. If you do not understand this, you will spend your entire life doing what you were told was responsible, and you will arrive at retirement holding the husk of what was once a fortune. Now we come to the part of the machine that turns ordinary inequality into something monstrous. Compound interest does not stop when a person dies. It keeps running. The curve continues. The doublings continue. And when wealth is passed from one generation to the next, the new generation does not start at zero. They start where the previous generation left off, which is to say, far up the curve, where the doublings are largest. Imagine a family that begins with a single ancestor who manages to accumulate $1 million by the age of 60. That ancestor invests the money at a long-term return of 7%. They live another 20 years and never touch the principal. By the time they die, the million has become roughly 4 million. The 4 million is inherited by their children. The children, now in middle age themselves, also invest the money at 7% and live another 20 years. By the time they die, the 4 million has become 16 million. The 16 million is inherited by the grandchildren. After another 20 years, 64 million. After another generation, 256 million. Notice what is happening. No one in this story did anything extraordinary. No one founded a unicorn startup. No one cured cancer. They simply allowed the machine to run. In 4 generations, a single $1 million has become $250 million. The descendants of that ancestor are now part of a tiny class of families that owns a wildly disproportionate share of everything. And they did not earn it. They inherited it. The work was done by the curve. Now imagine a family at the other end of the spectrum. The ancestor is born poor. They take on debt to survive. They die owing more than they own. The debt may not be inherited legally, but the conditions that produce the debt are inherited. The same neighborhood, the same schools, the same lack of access to capital, the same need to borrow at high rates just to handle emergencies. The next generation begins where the previous generation left off, which is to say, near the bottom of the curve, on the wrong side of the door. After 4 generations, the family is still poor, not because they were lazy, not because they were unlucky, because the machine was running against them the entire time. This is how dynasties are built. This is how poverty becomes hereditary even in countries that pretend to have abolished aristocracy. The titles are gone, the crowns are in museums, but the machine is still running and it is still sorting families into 2 groups, and the 2 groups are pulling apart at an accelerating rate. A reasonable person might ask, surely, at some point, the imbalance becomes so extreme that the system corrects itself. Surely there is some natural force that prevents one half of society from owning everything while the other half owns nothing. Unfortunately, the historical evidence suggests the opposite. Without deliberate intervention, the machine continues to concentrate wealth indefinitely. The economist Thomas Piketty laid out this case in great detail, showing that across centuries of data, the rate of return on capital has tended to exceed the rate of growth of the broader economy. When that condition holds, inequality grows by mathematical necessity. The reasons are structural. The wealthy have access to investment opportunities that the poor do not. They can place capital in private equity, in venture funds, in hedge funds, in real estate syndicates, in deals that require minimum commitments of millions of dollars. The poor are restricted to savings accounts, lottery tickets, and the occasional retail brokerage account. The returns available to capital at the top are systematically higher than the returns available to capital at the bottom. The curve is steeper for those who already own the most. The wealthy also have access to better information, better advisors, better tax strategies, better legal structures. A trust fund can hold assets across generations without paying inheritance tax. A holding company can shelter income from taxation. A foundation can move wealth across borders. The machine is not just running. It is being actively maintained and optimized by an entire industry of lawyers, accountants, and bankers, whose job is to make sure that nothing ever interrupts the compounding. Meanwhile, the institutions that might theoretically rebalance the system, governments, central banks, regulators, are themselves entangled with the wealthy. The largest political donors are the largest beneficiaries of the current arrangement. The revolving door between high finance and high government means that the people writing the rules are often the people who profit from them. Tax codes are riddled with loopholes that favor capital over labor. Bailouts protect the largest holders of assets, while austerity is imposed on the holders of nothing. The machine has friends in every chamber of every parliament. It does not need to defend itself, because no one is seriously attacking it. And yet, understanding the machine is itself a form of power. Once you see how it works, you can stop being a passive participant and start being a deliberate one. You cannot, by yourself, dismantle a system that has been running for centuries. But you can change which side of the door you walk through, even if only by a small amount, even if only over a long period of time. Every dollar that you move from the borrower side to the lender side is a small act of rebellion. Every percentage point of return that you capture for yourself instead of paying to a creditor is a brick removed from the wall. The first move is to eliminate the debts that are running against you at the highest rates. A credit card balance at 24% is a guaranteed loss that no investment can reliably outrun. Paying it off is mathematically equivalent to earning a guaranteed 24% return, tax-free. There is almost nothing you can do with money that produces a better outcome than killing high-interest debt. The second move is to begin owning assets, even in small amounts. A single share of an index fund, a single bond, a single fractional piece of real estate. The amount does not matter at the start. What matters is that you have crossed the threshold. You are now, however modestly, a participant in the asset economy. You are now plugged into the curve on the correct side. Time will do the rest, if you let it. The third move is to extend your time horizon. The machine rewards patience and punishes impatience. The investor who panics and sells during a downturn locks in their losses and steps off the curve. The investor who holds, who reinvests dividends, who keeps adding even small amounts during the bad years, captures the full power of compounding when the recovery arrives. The single most undervalued asset in personal finance is not a stock or a property. It is the willingness to do nothing for a very long time. The fourth move is to teach the next generation what you have learned. The reason wealthy families stay wealthy is not just the money. It is the knowledge. They teach their children the rules of the machine from a young age. They explain compound interest at the dinner table. They review investment statements with their teenagers. The poor are kept poor in part by an information vacuum that lasts for entire lifetimes. Breaking that vacuum in your own family is one of the most powerful things you can do. If this video changed the way you see the financial system even slightly, you owe it to yourself to keep going. We have a full episode on how the Federal Reserve quietly transfers wealth from savers to borrowers through interest rate policy, and it is the natural next step after what you just watched. The link is on screen and in the description. Watch it next and keep building the picture. The machine is not going to explain itself to you. That is what we are here for.